Blackwell, October 18, 1952. Consciousness and love. In the last paper, reciprocal affection was spoken of as being necessary for conjunction with the work. If a person has no affection for the work, there can be no conjunction with it. If there is no conjunction with it, there is no understanding of it. In short, affection for it opens the way to the eventual understanding of the work. Indifference or dislike closes the way to understanding it. If a man values many other things far more than any value he puts on the work in his inner self apart from what he pretends with his outer self, it will be unable to make a conjunction with him. He will not resemble that merchant seeking goodly pearls who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had, and boarded Matt. Kissy 46. Notice he had to sell first before he could buy. He sold what was valueless in comparison with the pearl. The merchant is yourself in relation to the work. To sell means, psychologically, to get rid of former interests you have valued by drawing energy out of them through not identifying. The released energies can then go to the pearl, which for us is the work and the attaining it consciousness. All this will take very many years. It is a mysterious process like a seed that grows no man knows how, and it leads to a gradual transvalation of one's previous valuations. To buy means to appropriate a thing, to make a thing one's very own psychologically. Psychic energy is like money. With little free psychic energy one can buy little new understanding. Now to want a thing is to value it, realizing one has not got it. Not to want it is not to value it. This is either because you imagine you have got it already, or because you do not care. To want a thing with all one's mind, soul, heart and strength is to value it supremely and want it with all centers. It is to love it, to feel the most powerful affection and emotion for it, before all other things. But the work says that we cannot love like this. We are not one of many. Our being is characterized by multiplicity. We have many different I, pointing in all directions. One I wants something, another I does not. One I likes, another I dislikes. One I has affection, another is indifferent. When a person is in the work, all this confused strife of I goes on year by year under the fitful light of self-observation and within hearing of the work. This is the period when the deputy steward is being formed. All those I that eventually decide that their lives are silly, and that they value the work more than their former pursuits group themselves around observing, and begin to point more or less in one direction. They form a transmitting medium for influences coming down from above, from the steward who is in touch with real I, but at first this transmitting medium is an imperfect one. Some I ought not to be there, and some important ones are still missing. But the man, the woman, feeling only the general mass effect of the deputy steward can then say they value the work and have reciprocal affection for it. They will not say they love it. They might, however, say they are very often conscious of it. The reason is that the work is now in them and not on the blackboard. The question arises, is love in its true sense consciousness? This brings us again to the injunction, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, Matt. XXII 39, the meaning of which was discussed a little last week. I said then that I had always found it uneasy to understand. Apart from the meaning of neighbor, which is difficult enough, what does as thyself mean? Which self? From letters I gather that some find no difficulty in this passage and do not regard it as needing any explanation. One says it means simply that one must love one's neighbor, and anybody knows what that means. Very good. But even so, why add as thyself? Mechanically we are built on self-love, which painfully has to be separated from us layer by layer as we awaken to our real condition. Most of what we call love is a veiled extension of the self-love. The only relevant commentaries I can find are those of the early church fathers, who chiefly dwell on the illustrative parable of the Good Samaritan, given in Luke X 29:2-37 that follows the injunction. Take this as signifying Christ, who came from above to be neighbor to those in this world, who are spiritually wounded almost to spiritual death. The symbolism is interesting. He gave them oil and wine, and paid for them at the inn. Certainly anyone having understanding of this work might be able to help those who are today similarly wounded by this age of materialism. They would then clearly be neighbors, psychologically speaking. Now the work speaks of three kinds of love. There is physical love, emotional love and conscious love. It says that emotional love easily turns into its opposite. It is love-hate. For this kind, the Greek word seems to be used in the Gospels. It is a torturing jealous love, and not love at all. For conscious love, the word seems to be used. It is never used of sexual love. Christ asks Peter which kind of love he has for him. Peter only understands emotional love, John XXI 15:2-17. This is the word used in the passage under discussion. Suppose we substitute consciousness for love. It would then read, "Thou shalt be conscious of thy neighbor as thyself." This could mean thou shalt be conscious of thy neighbor as thou art conscious of thyself. To me, at least, this rendering would be considerably more understandable in the light of what the work teaches about the need for increasing our consciousness. We are not nearly conscious of ourselves. We behold the mote in another's eye, but do not see the beam in our own eye. We do not put ourselves consciously in the position of another person. We do not do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Owing to a general lack of consciousness, human relations in the world are what they are. As you become more and more conscious of what you are really like, you become less and less critical of what the other person is like. Arrogance, superiority and intolerance fade, because they are seen by you to be ridiculous. The object of this work is to increase consciousness in every direction. Observing, in quiet, the same fault in yourself as you have heatedly or bitterly pointed out in another seems to me to be practical love. For by the work method of finding the same thing in yourself, you eventually see your neighbor as yourself, and yourself as your neighbor. But you must know yourself to begin with. You must begin to be conscious of yourself. This is the most necessary part of conscious life, which is not blind.